when Magnus Carlsen played his best game ever. In 2022, Carlsen played a game against Richard Rapport that is considered by many to be one of the best games he has ever played. The game was played in the World Blitz Chess Championship, and it was a back and forth affair that saw Carlsen come back from a two-rook deficit to win. The game started with the French defense, which is a common opening for black against one e4. The French defense is characterized by the moves e4, e6, d4, d5, and it leads to a complex and strategic battle. The French defense is characterized by the moves 1, e4, e6, 2, d4, and d5, and it leads to a complex and strategic battle. Carlsen played a very aggressive variation of the French defense, known as the Winawer Variation, and he quickly put Rapport under pressure. The Winawer Variation is named after the Polish chess master Szymon Winawer, and it involves the moves 3, nc3, b4. This move pins the white knight to the king, and it creates a lot of tension in the center. Carlsen was willing to take risks and play for a win, and he showed his fighting spirit with this move. In the early stages of the game, Carlsen sacrificed his knight on d5 to open up the position. This was a risky move, but it paid off for Carlsen. He was able to win a rook from Rapport, and he took control of the game. He also had a strong bishop pair and an active queen. Knight sacrifice is a very bold and daring move, and it requires a lot of calculation and intuition. Carlsen saw that by giving up his knight, he could create a lot of problems for Rapport's king. He also saw that he could win back the material by capturing Rapport's rook on a1. He did this with his queen, which also allowed him to attack Rapport's other rook on h1. However, Rapport was not given up without a fight. He played some very good moves, and he managed to get back into the game. He used his two rooks and his knight to create threats against Carlsen's king, and he also had some passed pawns on the queen side. A passed pawn is a pawn that has no enemy pawn in front of it or an adjacent files. Passed pawn can be very dangerous, especially in the endgame, because it can advance and become a queen. Rapport had two passed pawns on the b file and c file, and he tried to push them forward as fast as possible. At one point, Rapport was even up on a rook. He had managed to trap Carlsen's queen on the edge of the board, and he exchanged it for his own queen and a rook. This gave Rapport a material advantage, and he seemed to be on the verge of winning. Trapping an enemy queen is a very rare and impressive achievement in chess, and Rapport did it with great skill. He used his rook on h1 to cut off Carlsen's queen from escaping, and he then used his other rook on b8 to attack it from behind. He then offered to trade queens with his own queen on b7, and Carlsen had no choice but to accept. However, Carlsen continued to play very aggressively, and he even eventually managed to win another rook from Rapport. He did this by sacrificing his bishop on g6, which opened up Rapport's king position. He then used his other bishop and his rook to create a mating net around Rapport's king. A mating net is a pattern of moves that leads to an inevitable checkmate. Regardless of how the opponent defends, Carlsen sacrificed his bishop on g6 to expose Rapport's king to more checks from his other pieces. He then used his bishop on f4 and his rook on g1 to deliver checkmate. This gave Carlsen a two-rook advantage, and he was in a very strong position. He had two passed pawns on the king's side, and he also had more time on the clock than Rapport. Rapport was still not giving up, but he was running out of time. He made a crucial mistake in the endgame, and Carlsen was able to capitalize. He pushed his pawn forward, and then he prompted it to queen. He then checkmated Rapport with his queen and his rook. Promoting a pawn is another way of creating a new queen on the board when the pawn reaches the last rank on the board. This usually gives a decisive advantage to the player who does it first. Carlsen pushed his h-pawn all the way to h8, where he turned it into a queen. He then used his new queen and his rook on g8, and his rook on g8 to deliver checkmate. The game was a remarkable comeback for Carlsen, and it showed his incredible skill and determination. It is considered by many to be one of the best games ever played. and it is a testament to Carlsen's status as one of the greatest chess players of all time.